What's going on, everybody? Welcome to PFF's live NFL preview show for Week 12 of the NFL season, the post-Thanksgiving edition. So glad that you guys are here hanging out with us as we give you all of the best previews, bets, everything that you're looking for covering this Sunday slate of NFL action. I am Trevor Sikkema. With me here on the desk, I have Sam Monson, Ian Hartitz, and Eric Eager. Fellas, how's the Thanksgiving? How are we doing on this wonderful Sunday?
Good. Can I complain?
Best holiday of the year. Of course it was good.
Best holiday of the year.
Wow.
Oh.
Food, family, football. What else we need?
That third one. You're stretching it a little bit. I mean, unless you include the Egg Bowl, like, I don't really know.
Which we do, still do. But
look, San Jose State, Fresno State was also a game.
San Jose great and Fresno great.
Exactly. Yeah, both quarterbacks better than Jared Goff.
Can we not talk about college football? I just don't want to.
Oh, Ohio State, my apologies. We're going to get into the Thanksgiving slate. We're going to, a little trigger warning. We forgot to give that to you guys. We're going to talk about those three games that we had on Thanksgiving. Before we do that, we've got Kendall Valenzuela over on the bar studio desk hanging out with us, obviously looking at your YouTube and Twitter comments to get you in on the show as well. Kendall, how we doing? How was your Thanksgiving?
Doing well. Thanksgiving was good. Leftovers might be better than the actual meal, in my opinion. In my opinion. So we're on day 3 now?
Yeah, right.
They're good.
This should probably be like last day of leftovers, right? You can't really push it further than the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Am I wrong here? I feel like that's always my rule. Like, you got to be done with it by Sunday.
You got to be getting creative at this point if you're going to be using
true. You're going like sweet potatoes and like.
I mean, you're getting into risky
stuffing,
territory,
and that's what I'm saying. Like Sunday, I feel like that's got to be.
I already had pizza on Friday. Most important play is the next one, man. I'm over it.
Okay. All right. He's just on to the next play. Let's talk about some of those Thanksgiving Day games, starting with the Bears and the Lions. Bears take away the dub from the Lions here. 16-14. Danny Campbell just can't get a win in the win column. Eric, what do we think about this game?
I mean, at least they covered, but my goodness, Jared Goff is terrible.
He's not great.
The touchdown, obviously, to Josh Reynolds was good. But the touchdown to Hawkinson was like the duckiest duck. I mean, Steve threw better frisbees at Sam at the UC batting cages than Goff threw there. I thought early in the season that Goff might be bad, but at least he's functional, he's watchable. Mm-hmm. This team's going to cover spreads and be plucky. No.
Jared Goff obviously was traded for 2 first-round picks, right? They were like, we will give you 2 first-round picks to take this guy off of our team. And I think a lot of people thought, all right, Goff's not going to be the future, but like you said, he's serviceable. We get the 2 first-round picks. We're going to be fine. Might be a little tougher to stomach than we originally thought here for the Lions.
What if this is just the beginning of the Goff tanking era? He just goes from team to team as this mercenary, just bringing franchise after franchise another first-round pick.
He still doesn't have a win without Sean McVay as his head coach. He's now 3 different coaches. 0 wins. I think it's up to 16 games, a full season at this point. That would be amazing. If he went his entire career 20-something wins with Sean McVay, none for anybody else.
I think the only thing that would be more horrendous than Goff, just traveling from team to team, hey, not only do I come with 2 first-round picks, but I make the picks you already have way better.
Way better.
But to me, the worst thing would be a quarterback guru wannabe. Shanahan's not going to do it because he has Lance, but think of what if he went to Cleveland, right? And Stefanski's I made Baker look okay. I could probably make Goff look okay.
It's like a career challenge.
Exactly. I do feel like some of these guys
Sean
are
Payton.
Exactly. Yes. Sean Payton
that would be a good one.
We're all talking. Sean Payton took another failed first overall pick and made him a really efficient passer. Could he do it with Goff? I don't know. I mean, he made Trevor Sikkema look like a competent NFL quarterback until 2 weeks ago.
Of course, it's all in the name. It's all in the first name, Trevor. I mean, it's just destiny at that point.
True.
I fell short of that. What do we think about the hot seat for both these coaches? Nagy, there was the giant whirlwind of he's been told he's fired. No, he hasn't. Gets to Thanksgiving. Right. So we look at both of these coaches. I think everybody would clearly tell you that Nagy's seat is center of the sun kind of hot. But Dan Campbell, look, I love him. I want him to win. He's the Ted Lasso of the NFL, as people say, but we're winless here. Lions aren't good, but we're winless for the Lions.
They gave Patricia 3 years, though, man.
For them, for them, winless is actually good. This entire project was set out as a multi-year thing. You could tell, A, the contracts they were handed, B, the moves they made, where it's all of the resources went into these two areas. We're not even touching these areas until next year, at which point you can't go like, well, you didn't win at the end of year one. It's like, yeah, of course I didn't win. I didn't get a receiver at all, any of them.
I will say the only thing that I'm worried about that, because you're right, like lose more games, get the better draft pick, get the number one overall pick. That's probably what you would want to do anyways. But there comes a time where if you just lose too much and you get this like, we're this gimmicky, we win one game and everybody's happy standard that you have, that's when it gets bad. Well, we got to pay attention to that. I want to move on to Raiders Cowboys. Raiders come away with the big win here, 36-33. Thoughts on Derek Carr and Dak, that duel there?
I mean, the Raiders, everybody who bet the over season win total breathed a sigh of relief. They got to 6. They need to get to 7, 7.5 in many cases there. I think but this just shows you can't really peg the Raiders, right? Like, they lose. They get killed by the Bengals at home, like, just 3 days later. They go on the road. It's also very characteristic of the Dallas. Like, they got rid of Jason Garrett, and all the inconsistencies stayed with them. Like, this Dallas team is super, like, I would say impressive at times, and then they cover the spread first 6 or 7 weeks of the year, and now they can't even beat a Vegas team that is reeling, really.
It was good to see Deshaun Jackson get in there, really have his snaps be at a high, and really turn Derek Carr back into the guy we saw during the first 8 or 9 weeks of the season. Because when you have that field stretcher, and before it was Henry Ruggs, even if they never were even throwing Ruggs the ball more than 3 or 5 times a game most weeks, it makes everything so much easier for Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow over the intermediate areas of the field. Fingers crossed that Waller's not going to be out too long.
Yeah, Waller, no major damage at least, which is good. We'll see how much he can play for the rest of the season. But Bills, Saints. Bills 31, Saints 6. I think that most people predicted the Bills would win this game, but how much are we out on the Saints now? Because no Jameis Winston the rest of the year. We talked about how great of a job Sean Payton has done with that group as it was, but I mean, is this just too much to overcome at this point to believe in the Saints?
I think you're just looking, this is the limitations of the Saints and everything that they were doing and the injuries, and they were down bodies. And you're looking at this game and you're saying there is a clear blueprint to beating Buffalo on either side of the ball, but I don't think that the Saints have the horses to get it done. They don't have the bodies. And this was a classic example of that. Buffalo is too good to beat if you don't have the capacity of a team like the Colts to dominate them at the line of scrimmage or to shut down what that offense does, and New Orleans just didn't have either of it.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo's been really good this year against bad teams, other than the Jaguars, and which
is so strange.
Yeah, which is so strange. But I do think Buffalo, when you watch that game, there's still something missing. Like, I still think if you look at the AFC, you're trying to handicap who's going to win that conference. It's a bunch of flawed teams. I think Buffalo still falls into that category. But as Sam said, too many injuries for the Saints on offense, but also the defense. It shows the limitation. That defense was playing really well all year and trying to carry that team, and you just can't for that long when you're dealing with that unprecedented level of me. It kind of reminds me of like the 2014 Cardinals, right, where Carson Palmer's playing great, he gets hurt, and then it's like John Skelton and guys like that where it's just like you can't.
You're right. What are you going to do?
What are you going to do? Like you're asking too much of this team.
And they also don't play the style of defense that was giving Buffalo problems.
Yes.
Buffalo. The thing about that game is that the concerns or the questions that Buffalo had to answer before that game are still there. And now they're going to get to answer them against the Patriots twice.
Yeah. Well, Buffalo gets the win. Raiders get the win. So let's take a look at the updated standings here in the AFC. And like Eric was mentioning, talk about who could come out on top. We got Buffalo and New England up at the top, tied for the AFC East. Titans still in control of the AFC South, but for how much longer, given the injuries that they have? Ravens at the top of the North, Chiefs there at the top of the West. What sticks out to you guys? What do you think about this?
There's 2 divisions where both every team's 500 or better. Like, that's kind of crazy. That the heavy lifting being done by the Jets, Jags, and Houston Texans to keep this conference afloat. But yeah, I mean, it's just like looking at the top there isn't a team that's going to run away with us. I don't think any of us believe that the Titans are going to hang on to that 1 seed for all that much longer with all the injuries they have, let alone their own division. Which I think the Colts are probably a decent long shot bet at this point. But yeah, to me, it's there's a lot of good teams. I don't think that there's a great team.
What do you guys think?
It's crazy to me, after all this turmoil with the Chiefs throughout this entire year, here they are sitting atop the AFC West at 7-4, and they haven't even played their best offense yet. I mean, we had that game against the Raiders where Raiders had the blueprint for how everyone else was slowing down the Chiefs. They said, screw that, and the Chiefs were able to get a nice win.
The Chiefs reverted completely back. Like, against the Raiders, they ran 22 plays under center. Against the Dallas Cowboys, like 12. They ran 25 RPO plays this past week after only running like 10 or so against the Raiders. The Chiefs found a formula and was like, I hate math.
Something that I want to do a little look forward to with the Chiefs, because they're on the bye this week. There's a massive game coming up, and you mentioned kind of they haven't played their best ball yet. They play against the Los Angeles Chargers week 15. That's December 16th. That's in Los Angeles.
So Chiefs home game.
And it's a Thursday night football game coming off back-to-back divisional games right there. So the Chiefs are sitting at number one in the division right now. If they even, let's say they split Denver and Las Vegas, if they then can on short rest go to Los Angeles and beat the Chargers, I think they take a pretty strong hold of that division where you flip it. Even if they go 1-1 in those previous two games and they lose to the Chargers, all of a sudden it might be wide open depending on who wins between those Raiders and Broncos games.
Yeah, the schedule shined really brightly on them. They got Dallas, right, and they got a bye, and then they get 2 more home games. So 3 home games surrounding a bye right when they're pretty healthy right now.
Right.
Late byes have been characteristic of teams that have won the Super Bowl in the past. Kansas City in 19, Tampa Bay in 20. So that it really helped them out. And the thing about that Chargers game you previewed, Trey, is first-year coaches on Thursday Night Football. As good as Brandon Staley is, that's the whole Andy Reid coaching advantage thing. So even though I think that the Chargers might end up even being favored in that game, and they should, they're a good football team. Again, things fell nicely for Kansas City after a rough start.
Yep. Another schedule I want to look at is the Bills, because the Bills are sitting atop their division, but they're not alone. They're tied with the New England Patriots. And Sam, you and I were discussing this earlier this week. They haven't even played the Patriots yet. Right. They still have both of those games, week 13, which is next week, and then at New England in week 17.
Yeah, that's their season. I mean, Buffalo, we just talked about it. They had some real questions to answer. I don't think the Saints are capable of posing those questions, but the Patriots absolutely are. They are built to do to the Buffalo Bills what the Indianapolis Colts were able to do in terms of dominating them on the ground, overpowering them with a big offensive line, with a powerful ground game. And on defense, they do play the kind of defense that has given Buffalo problems. Force them to be patient, make Josh Allen win the game in a boring type of way that he doesn't like doing. So that is Buffalo's season there. They got it back to being at the top of the division right now when they were facing, looking up at the Patriots for a while. But now those 2 games are everything.
And you got to think that even if they just split with the Patriots, the Buffalo Bills play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa, and so that's a tough one. But Carolina, New York Jets, and Atlanta Falcons all at home for Buffalo. So you got to think those are wins. So how they are able to handle the Patriots, I think, could go a long way into them not only winning the division,
if you bet
but
the
maybe
season win total under on Buffalo, right, which is it was a 10.5-11, right? You're hoping for 2 losses to New England and a loss to Tampa, because you're not losing to the Falcons, the Jets, or the Panthers.
Right.
I just want to see some more consistency out of Josh Allen, because they might need it more than ever now with Tre'Davious White obviously out for the year
good point.
with the ACL. Because this defense before last week was number 1 in EPA per play against the pass and the run. We saw Jonathan Taylor kind of expose the latter variable a little bit there. But with Josh this year, week 1, I want to say he was PFF's 16th highest graded passer. Since then, it's been like top 8 or outside the top 24. I mean, we've seen him look great, and they can be great. The problem is they can also look pretty bad, and if the defense isn't as dominant, there could be some problems in Buffalo.
So let's flip over to the other side. Let's look at the NFC standings now. Dallas Cowboys still at the top of the NFC East, but not looking as strong. Bucs still atop of the South. We see the Panthers and the Saints now tied right behind them. We've got the Green Bay Packers at 7-3 atop the NFC North, and then Cardinals sitting there at 9-2. I mean, they got to be feeling pretty good about themselves, even with the rest of the division. I mean, the capability to play well, just not when it comes to the standings, guys. What stands out to you when you look at this NFC standing?
Seahawks are 3-7.
Bad, man.
Their last win was against the Jaguars. Like, they haven't even looked competent for most of this season. I know Russ has been banged up, but man, other than those wide receivers, I don't know if there's even like a position group with the Seahawks you can feel that good about right now.
It's so sad because they had close losses with Geno Smith, right? And they could have won a couple of those games. And their schedule was one of the league's hardest in the first part of the season. It gets easier now down the stretch. But if you can't win a home game, I mean, like, those are $50 million throws career earnings-wise out of Colt McCoy. But, like, if you can't beat Colt McCoy at home, like...
He's done it 2 straight years. He got it in 2020.
Like, those are 50... Like, he's going to be in the league for another, like, what, 10 years at $5 million a year? Those are $50 million throws.
Did you see
by
that?
Colt McCoy.
Colt McCoy is the only quarterback to have wins in Seattle in the last 2 years, including Seahawks quarterbacks.
Oh, no.
Which basically means Russ hasn't won a game at home this year. But Colt McCoy is the only quarterback to have wins in Seattle.
There's some significant home futility in the NFC West. The Seahawks not winning at home. The Rams, the 49ers have won against one team at home since they were in the Super Bowl, and that's the Rams both years, 20 and 21. It's a weird thing. If you look at the NFC, to me, I think the New Orleans Saints are probably out, right? So when you look at the last 2 playoff spots, you're really talking about the San Francisco 49ers, Minnesota Vikings, who play today, and who we're going to talk about with Darius a little bit later. The Philadelphia Eagles are in there, because if you look at the way that the statistics sort of roll out with the simulations, Carolina and Atlanta are there nominally. But there's going to have to be significant changes in the way that these teams operate before they even get close, because Carolina hasn't even played Tampa Bay yet.
I can't believe we just said Atlanta is still in it. They scored 3 points.
No, they're bad. They're not good. I do want to take a look at the Cardinals schedule like we did with the other teams, because they also have a game that I think is pivotal to what they want to do, especially when it comes to getting the number 1 overall seed, and that is that game against the Los Angeles Rams right there in Week 14. That's a Monday Night Football game, so it's huge. They're already 9-2. They've got the 10th easiest schedule remaining right now. If they win that game, 1 seed's probably theirs, right? They're coming off a bye to face Chicago. They're probably going to win that. They're going to go to 10-2. If they win that game and they go to 11-2, the number 1 seed is probably theirs. But if they lose to the Rams, not only is it the Rams, of course, gaining a game on them, but maybe depending on what happens in the rest of the league, maybe you're opening the door for the Packers, for the Buccaneers, whoever, to kind of creep up and get a little bit closer to you, at least get within striking distance. That game in Week 14, I feel like, is, if the Cardinals can win it, they're probably going to get the 1 seed.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah, and they clinched the division basically with that win, right? Because they're a couple games. They're going to be a couple games ahead, and then they're going to have the tiebreaker, and then from there, I mean, who's tough on that schedule?
It's Detroit, but then it's Indianapolis at home.
And by Week 18, Seattle's probably starting Geno Smith, right? Like at some point, the starting Russell Wilson when you're 3-10 or whatever is not going to be a thing that they're going to want to do.
Right. You guys agree?
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals have been really impressive to me. Them and the Packers are the 2 teams that basically everybody has been beset by a bunch of problems or had the depth questioned, and almost every single team, whenever that's happened, they've started to wobble. Tampa Bay, we've lauded their depth at receiver. As soon as that's actually tested and those guys need to start, doesn't look the same. Dallas, similar.
Good point.
The Cardinals are 2-1 with Colt McCoy at quarterback. Green Bay have done it as well in terms of missing a lot of key players, and obviously that one game minus Aaron Rodgers. But the Cardinals have been so impressive by how they've gone through this period without Kyler Murray and without DeAndre Hopkins at receiver.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It wasn't even just Colt McCoy. It was DeAndre Hopkins, who's last season, if you would have taken DeAndre Hopkins off the field for the Cardinals for 10 snaps, they would have self-destructed.
Right.
Now, he's barely played for a month, and they're splitting games or winning 2 out of 3. I mean, Kingsbury, I think, when we look at Coach of the Year candidates, we're talking about a favorite, in my opinion.
And you look at some of the contributions they've got from guys like A.J. Green, James Conner, Robert Alford, guys that we wouldn't have been shocked to, I think, see be out of the league this year.
Right.
They're playing winning football.
Alford was the most impressive franchise in the league this year, in my opinion. I think bar none. They went into the season 6-1 to win the NFC West. We're talking about them clinching by Week 14.
It's crazy. Yeah, they have strung things together incredibly well, including through some major injuries. No doubt. They've been really great. People, Western and Southern is teaming up with PFF's very own Chris Collinsworth to get your fantasy and financial scoreboards right. You want to hear about Chris's old playing days? Maybe some behind-the-scenes stories with Al on Sunday night, or maybe some answers to some questions that you really need in the financial world. Well, now you can do both over at westernandsouthern.com/askchris. That is westernandsouthern.com/askchris. That's where you can get your questions in for either of these things. And if you do, every question that you ask gets you a ticket to potentially win you a catered event for the big game at the end of February. All the questions are going to be answered on Chris Collinsworth's podcast as well as Western and Southern's Instagram. Remember, with Western and Southern, you can rest assured on game day. For the Tennessee Titans, Oh, man. They've got to stop the skid at some point. And today, they are facing the New England Patriots. Patriots can't look too far forward to the Buffalo Bills like they play next week. But, oh, man, this line's a touchdown favorite for New England at home. Sam, I'm curious, what do you think about that line? Who you're taking with the line in this game? And then what's a little preview you got for the matchup?
Yeah, it is a lot of points, and I'm still buying into New England. I just think that the way that the Titans are beginning to collapse, given all the injuries and everything that's happened to them, is concerning, and the Patriots are exactly the kind of team that can take advantage of it. Since Derrick Henry went down, Mac Jones is the number 2 graded quarterback in the NFL. Tannehill, who was right up there as one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL with Derrick Henry, is now 27th. With a PFF grade of like 59. The Titans are 29th with 3.0 yards per carry, 31st in yards before contact. Like, as soon as you take Derrick Henry out of that lineup, everybody else is going down as well.
You telling me Adrian Peterson wasn't the catalyst for like a rebirth in Tennessee?
It doesn't look like he was.
In the run game?
I don't know what to tell you.
No, wait, give it time.
Okay, yeah.
He's not on the team anymore, but give it time. He might come back.
The season's not over.
Right. You never know what's going to happen.
At some point, though, these teams, like, you are getting good value, right, with buying low and selling high.
Sure.
We thought we did with the Falcons on Thursday Night Football. And in some ways, like, fundamentally, you kind of did. Like, the New England Patriots they scored 1 offensive touchdown against, like, and I know the Falcons are, the 0-2 Bucs on defense, but like that was sort of a harbinger of things to come. I think there's going to be some regression in New England. I think Vrabel is a good coach, and I think that you're going to get sort of the Patriots looking ahead to Buffalo. I think this is too many points. And even though, there's always this situation where you're like, oh, I could look like a huge idiot here because this is such a mismatch. I do think the Titans keep this game close. I think Tannehill's better, than just a guy who's sort of riding the coattails of Derrick Henry.
I thought some of the Mac Jones takes after that Thursday night game were nauseating. That one and the Brady Sunday night game. He's been good. We always knew he was the most pro-ready quarterback coming in out of this class.
Correct.
I'm not willing to just write off the rest of these guys already when we, again, knew this was going to happen because, yes, Mac Jones, when he has the top-ranked scoring defense, he doesn't have to throw a pass more than 10 yards downfield is great. This year, only Jimmy G, Tyrod Taylor, and our guy Jared Goff have a lower adjusted completion rate when throwing at least 20 yards downfield. Like, he hasn't had to win them games, and they're winning games, so whatever, a win is a win is a win. But, like, I think we're crowning the guy a little bit.
And the defensive front for the Tennessee Titans is still intact, and they've ruined the Rams game, etc. I think, speaking of ruining things, right? Right now, the Tennessee Titans, by virtue of, having wins against Buffalo, Kansas City, so on and so forth, they're currently still the favorite to get the 1 seed in the AFC. 47%. New England's at 16%. If Tennessee were to win this game, somehow pull it off, 73% to get the 1 seed in the AFC.
Holy cow, really?
And because again, it would be another situation where they have the 1 game tiebreaker, right, with a key rival in the AFC. They have a 2 game tiebreaker with Indianapolis as well. But if New England were to win this game, and they are favored to, it's about even between New England and Tennessee because New England would be the one team that has a tiebreaker with the Titans. Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is a humongous game from a leverage standpoint. This is going to be a theme throughout the show. There's tons of games where, like, whoever wins the game, there's a ton of leverage on that riding on that outcome.
It's just so hard for me to think that the Titans can play the brand of football that has been winning them games again with all of their injuries. No Derrick Henry, no Julio Jones, no A.J. Brown. Like where are you going, Ian? I feel like this has been a totally different offense with and without Derrick Henry.
AP couldn't fix it. Maybe, just maybe, Golden Tate can be that guy in the year 2021. But truly, the numbers have been just dramatically different, which we would expect, but to actually see them written out like we have in this handy-dandy graphic, I think is particularly surprising. 8th in EPA per play overall with Henry, 15th in pass, 2nd with the run. Without, we're looking at a legit bottom 10 offense. Overall, pass, run, however you want to cut it. So, we always say that running backs, do they matter, do they not matter? Pretty damning stuff right here, guys.
Yeah, and that was always the worry about Todd Downing was, this is Arthur Smith's offense, he's going to run the exact same offense, right? But the problem is not necessarily when things are going right, but it's when things go wrong. Does the guy have a left hand when it's not really his offense?
No running back has had more wins above average than Derrick Henry has over the last 3 years. I think the Titans weathered the storm a little bit when Henry first went out, but now you don't even have your receivers. Like at some point, it just becomes too much. You have lost too much talent to injury. I think that's where we are with the Titans. And I know what Eric's saying. Touchdowns, a lot of points, but I'm with Sam. I'm with Ian. I'm taking New England to overcome that 7 points there. Rams, Packers. This is a big one. Rams are traveling to Lambeau to face Rodgers and the Packers there. Sam, what do we think about this game? Rams, 2 losses in a row. I mean, they're going the opposite direction, and Packers are coming off a loss, but it was a shootout against a divisional opponent in the Vikings, so I still think that they played well. What do you think about this game with this preview?
Yeah, this feels like a real kind of referendum on the Rams season right now. They are in a bit of a tailspin right now, 2 games, but if they lose 3 on the bounce, and this is a really tough game, all of a sudden it's an absolute crisis. You know, Stafford right now has a lower overall PFF grade than his last 5 seasons in Detroit. So the guy that we thought was being held back by Detroit and being dragged down by the system and let down by everybody around him, same player. Now, it's crafted slightly differently in that he's had a run of pretty good games and then 2 complete disasters that account for half of his interceptions, more than half of his turnover-worthy plays. But right now, you know, we're getting all the news coming out as, it's not Stafford, it's the injury he's been dealing with, don't worry about it. Stafford needs to show up right now, otherwise
I thought Steve put it in the trade that like Stafford was coming from Detroit, but the injuries weren't. Like that was like what I was told in this trade. The apologetics for that trade was that the injuries weren't coming with. There was some sort of homeopathic thing in LA that was going to keep him from being hurt.
Ian, what do you think about Stafford and how he's been playing with the
It's like that Scooby-Doo meme where they find the villain and they rip off like the Matthew Stafford mask and it's just still Matthew Stafford. But it really, I mean, there was the first 2 months of the year where it looked like everything we had heard in the offseason about Stafford just being a new organization away from being this great quarterback. It looked good in the first 8 weeks of the year, but man, these last 2 months have been rough, particularly when he has been throwing that deep ball. At least 20 yards downfield, 18 for 33 in the first 2 weeks, 13 big-time throws, just 1 turnover-worthy play. Has not completed one of those, though, since week 8. 4 turnover-worthy plays when throwing downfield over the last 2 games. Guys, that's not good. And now we have chronic back problems and elbow issues. That's been impacting him all season, but we're just going to wait until week 12.
Eric, is Stafford a win in Lambeau guy?
He's not. Stafford is not. We have plenty of years of data on this. Stafford is 20 wins above replacement, less than Aaron Rodgers, despite playing in the same division, same opponents as him basically since 2009. Stafford is fundamentally not a win in Lambeau guy, and at the same time, you are seeing the Rams get respect in the betting markets. Packers open as a 1-point favorite. The Rams are currently favored by 1.5, and there's a few reasons for this, right? Both teams are banged up, but the Rams are less banged up, and Stafford is certainly like the most important injured player in this game. But Aaron Rodgers, bad toe, and it took him he hasn't played all that well this year. And then there's the other part was road teams coming off of a bye are worth something on the betting market. So that's why you're seeing the sort of Rams get respect here. But this is a humongous leverage game, right? Currently in the NFC, the 1 seed, the Packers have about a 1 in 4 chance of getting the 1 seed. The Rams are about 6%, right? We talked about how great Arizona is. And the Rams have to win that division just to even come close. If Green Bay were to win, you're more like a 1 in 3 chance of getting the 1 seed there. The Rams would just need basically carnage in the NFC to get the 1 seed should they lose this game. But if LA were to win, right, this puts, again, Green Bay sort of, in not the driver's seat, right? Because, they would be at just 7%. Arizona, a strong team with a much better record. Packers do have the tiebreaker there, though. But the Rams would be at 12%, which is a puncher's chance, a 1 in 8 chance or so.
This is a big moving week for a lot of teams in the NFL. Yeah. This is big for them. I want to touch on the Rams record because you guys mentioned the Buffalo Bills being a team that's really beat up on bad opponents. Well, that's the same with the Rams. If you look at their record, they're 7-3. They're 5-0 against teams that are below 500. They're 2-2 against teams that are above 500. There's 1 game missing if you could do the math correctly, and that is the San Francisco 49ers, who are exactly right at 500. And so you can put that in either one, wherever you want to have it. Combined record of wins, 25, 47, and 1. Of course, you got the Lions in there to throw in the tie. This is a team that beats up on really bad teams and has really struggled against either really talented teams, good teams, or just teams that are playing with a lot of momentum at the time. We saw that with the San Francisco 49ers last week. They're coming up back-to-back losses. I don't have a lot of faith in this Rams team right now, especially if Eric's right and if Stafford's just not a win in Lambeau kind of a guy.
And that's the other thing. I joke that he brought the injuries with him from Detroit, but he also brought the inability to beat good teams with. I mean, Stafford's career in Detroit was basically beating the Bears once a year, beating the Vikings once a year, and then kind of not really getting over the hump against the truly great teams. And because it's interesting, like who did the Rams beat last year with Goff? They went on the road and beat Tampa, right? They beat Dallas. They beat some good teams last year. I don't think it's a characteristic of a McVay team. I think it's either noise or something fundamental about Stafford. What happens when he gets up against teams that have talent levels requisite of his own?
So is Jared Goff a win in Lambeau kind of guy?
No.
I'm going to keep this bit going because this is hilarious to me. What constitutes a win in Lambeau?
I feel like the only guy and Brady was like, I think 0 in Lambeau prior to winning in the NFC Championship game, but it's a select few that are winning Lambeau guys.
Yes, this is a club that we are going to keep track of, I think, throughout this season and the shows.
You got to be elite players like Kirk Cousins to get a win.
To be a win in Lambeau guy, no doubt.
Kirk is a tie in Lambeau guy, which I feel like is it's an oddly fitting.
That might be a little bit worse. Kendall, what do you got for us? What's the chat saying?
Yeah, well, first of all, the YouTube chat is incredible today. They want to know where Sam got his shirt. First of all, they're loving the highlighter blue.
Wow.
So that's one of them. But the question is, what if Matthew Stafford starts to play bad and OBJ's dad releases another Twitter video to kind of get OBJ out of it?
OBJ played 15 snaps in that first game. And, there were non-ironic tweets already calling him the problem.
100%.
Wasn't there
It was a pick. What more do you need?
There's a pick to OBJ.
Wasn't there a classic does this person know what they're talking about more than how is OBJ going to replace Robert Woods? He's not. Robert Woods is the big slot backside blocking in the run game, reverse guy, great. He's everything that OBJ isn't. I mean, it's weird, but OBJ's got to fit in that offense, and they got to find somebody to replace Robert Woods, which is going to be, I think, impossible. That's a squeaky wheel here where you look at the Rams injury report only has 1 or 2 guys. Well, that's because Robert Woods is put on IR. And that, to me, they're still going to have to figure out how to deal with that.
It's kind of amazing they couldn't find something for Deshaun Jackson to do there. He had to go all the way to Vegas to find a role. They could use a couple extra receivers.
Well, what about their second-round pick, too? I feel like that.
IR, but yeah.
Well, they moved on from Josh Reynolds, right?
Mm-hmm. The list goes on and on.
Josh Reynolds has always been good.
And look at the Titans. They moved on from him, too.
Mm-hmm.
Always, Sam. Always. Where'd you get the shirt?
I have no idea. It was before Eric went to town with
it was once reported that Josh Reynolds turned down Kansas City because he got $100,000 more for Tennessee. He might always have been good, but his decision making.
I think they also threw in Sam's shirt on that deal.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I can. I stand corrected.
Now we're really getting to the bottom of things. That's why people watch the show.
People.
Pristine Auction. It's your go-to place for signed sports memorabilia. You search for any team, any player, whatever it is. If you're looking for some autographed stuff, Pristine Auction's got you. All of the bids start at $1. So there's a good chance that if you find exactly what you're looking for, something you really want, you can come away with a great steal. If you use the promo code PFF, you're going to get $10 off whatever the first auction is that you win. Not just the first one that you bid on. It's going to be the first one that you win. Use the promo code PFF. Get $10 off on some great autographed sports memorabilia over at pristineauction.com. Big week in the AFC North. Forgot where we were going there for a second.
Our Bengals.
Bengals. Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm driving the ship. No one
would fault you for forgetting the Bengals after all these years, to be quite honest.
Bengals Steelers. The Bengals are in Cincinnati for this one. People are flooding the streets. What a massive game with huge implications. Bengals favored by 3.5.
Ethan over there wondering why there's traffic, on this way in.
That is always the best thing when somebody who isn't all that tuned into the league is why is there a marathon downtown?
Bengals jerseys everywhere.
The Browns played in Cincinnati. What was it? 2 weeks ago? When was it?
3 weeks ago or something.
And they were flooding the streets. Yeah. I mean, this is back when
our Bengals.
They still believed, and I guess Bengals. They're making good games. out of certain games this season, I think that this is one of them. Obviously, it's a divisional matchup. You know the teams really, really well. Sam, what do you think about this matchup here? The line is at the Bengals favored by more than a field goal. Do you believe that line is right? Who are you taking?
I do, and the reason is not so much about Cincinnati. It's about what we're seeing from Pittsburgh right now. And it feels like this is just the inevitable conclusion of the fact that they were never actually that good to begin with. Yeah. And, heading into the season, everybody was writing the Pittsburgh eulogy and saying this team is going to stink. And Mike Tomlin is too good a coach to let that happen. But if you look at just how they're playing right now, as an offense, they have no games in the last four with a PFF grade above 62.8. Their defense has one grade above 60 in the last four. This is essentially a bad team right now that's trying to get things going and trying to hang in games against fundamentally better sides.
Yeah, that's the thing with the Steelers, right? And that's where you can maybe attribute some of that to Tomlin, right? Because the 4 games are 2-1-1 in those games. Part of it's playing bad opponents, part of it's getting lucky, but you're getting lucky here with Big Ben, right? He has a touchdown interception ratio of 13-4. Pittsburgh Steelers fans have generated a little bit more self-awareness since last year, but that would have gotten us, kind of roasted last year. But you look at his, big time throw, just 12, turnover worthy play, 16. It's again another situation where what's happening on the field is not being represented necessarily in the traditional stats or even the win-loss column. The reason I'm taking the Steelers here, though, at +4 and then +3.5 is sort of almost the same bet. Tomlin just does a really good job as an underdog. He's just a very good coach. I would never lay a big number with the Steelers because they always seem to play down to their opponent. But it's really hard to. It's
they
really
just
hard
never
to
get blown out.
Yeah, they just don't get blown out. And so to me, I think I would lean Steelers here. The only mismatch that is in the Steelers' favor here by a margin is the head coach.
The one nice thing I can say about Big Ben and the Steelers this year
is
they're feeding us some fantasy-friendly players thanks to that volume. We say a lot in fantasy land, we can't chase talent or efficiency as much as we want to because we just need that volume, and that's what wins out. And my goodness, does Najee Harris have all of it. We have a cool thing called expected points with PFF where we can see, based on that volume, how many fantasy points we would expect them to have. And the only guy with a larger workload over the past 3 seasons, Christian McCaffrey, he did it both in 2019 and 2020. So I don't think anyone's really mistaking Najee for being as good as CMC just yet, but in fantasy land, he continues to be locked in as a top 5 running back regardless of the matchup. And also, guys, Deontay Johnson, it's just wild. He just keeps on keeping on. He hasn't had this 200-yard blow-up game or anything, but he's got 8 straight games with at least 50 receiving yards. Only Cooper Kupp has more.
That stat's great because it shows that the Steelers are being, they're putting Harris in, terrible situations, and he's, overcoming them a little bit, which I don't know if that's great for him long-term unless there's a change there, but it sort of shows how impressive he's been. I think, speaking of bad situations, everybody looks at Pittsburgh, right? They're 5-4-1. They look okay, mm-hmm. right? But you look at this. We looked at the AFC standings. They have the hardest schedule in the NFL moving forward. Compared to Cincinnati, not so bad. And when you look at the playoff probabilities coming in, Cincinnati's at 55%. Right? Pittsburgh's at 15%. Unless this game ends in a tie or something, the tiebreaker's not going to matter that Cincy won in Pittsburgh. But if Cincy were to win, they're more than a 2-3 chance to make the playoffs. The Cincinnati Bengals, the team that's right across the street, is a 2-3 chance to make the playoffs with a win today at home, whereas Pittsburgh's basically buried. If you have a loss today by Cincinnati, though, it's more even here with the Bengals, about basically a 1-3 chance to make the playoffs, whereas Pittsburgh, 29% or so. So this, again, every single game this weekend that we're going to preview has enormous leverage in the marketplace.
I think that there's not a ton that really separates this team, right? We look at the records, it's 5-4-1, it's 6-4. The points for, the points against. Really, Cincinnati has a lot more points for, but that's really, I think, because of the hot start that they had, things have kind of started to even out. This is a pretty even matchup, and that's why, in terms of betting, I'd be taking the Steelers. If you get it +4, +3.5, I'd be taking the Steelers here, getting the points, because I just think it's going to be a close game. I don't know if the Steelers are going to have enough in the tank to win it, but you mentioned Tomlin just does not get blown out, especially for teams that don't severely out-talent what the Steelers have. So I'd be taking the Bengals in the points here. Do you think this is going to be a big Burrow game? What do you think, Ian?
If they can keep him clean, that has kind of been the X factor. We all saw the Penei Sewell versus Jamar Chase, meme in the beginning of the year. Like, ideally, we can have both of those situations occurring of open fields and plenty of time to throw, because Burrow has been nothing short of magnificent in a clean pocket this year. 7th in PFF passing grade, 3rd in yards per attempt. And I know we're used to the Steelers being this juggernaut of getting after the passer, but you look at it this year, only the Seahawks, Lions, and Falcons actually have a worse pressure rate through 11 weeks of action. So they're getting TJ Watt back. I know they've been banged up throughout the year, but man, if they let Burrow sit there, he's going to throw for 3 touchdowns on 18 attempts again.
Yeah. Not a lot of great values on overs in the prop market, but Jamar Chase at 67.5. I think the overratedness of the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is one. Bet the over for Chase. I think he'll have a bounce back game in this one.
Go ahead.
He's due. That's all I got.
Okay. All right. Browns-Ravens is the other AFC North matchup that we got here. This one's in Baltimore. Ravens favored by 3.5. Just feels like the Browns are all over the place, right? I mean, like, you look at what this Ravens team has been. They've not really played their strongest as of late, and here they are. They're still a favorite over the Browns. Sam, do you believe in that line? What do you think about this one?
At this point, I think the only thing anybody knows about Baker Mayfield is that he will be inconsistent throughout the course of a season, his career,
is
his lifetime, whatever it is. Baker Mayfield is going to be all over the place. And right now, he's coming off a 2-game stretch with a PFF grade of 40 out of 100. So that's not good. So right now, it's everybody writing off Baker Mayfield. What do the Browns do? They cut him loose, looking to the quarterback of the future.
Wow,
it feels like... Yeah, but it feels like coming off the back of those 2 games, like now is when Baker Mayfield randomly shows up with like a 90 grade, dominates, looks like a superstar, and all of a sudden, throws that question back at the Browns, like, well, maybe Baker is the quarterback of the future. But it kind of needs for that to happen. Or, a Herculean effort from the run game, which, has been pretty impressive this year, leads the NFL in explosive run rate, average yards after contact as well. I think one of those 2 things needs to happen, otherwise Baltimore, with a significantly better quarterback, wins.
Yeah, and they do have a significantly better quarterback. I think the problem with the Ravens, though, is you have so much weirdness to their season, right? You go on the road and you beat Detroit with a 60-something yard field goal. You win a game in Chicago with your backup quarterback. There's a lot of noisy outcomes for them. And I think the issue when you come to the betting table and you look at the Ravens is the problem with the Ravens is you think they're the Ravens. They're not anymore, right? From player 2 to 53. The Browns, I think, wiped the floor with them, from a talent standpoint.
Right.
And to Sam's point, and at the head coach, I think Harbaugh is a top 2 or 3 coach in the NFL. And I think Stefanski's probably a top 8 coach in the NFL. So there's not that big of a mismatch. It really comes down to the QB, and I think I agree with Sam. I think the oscillatory nature of Mayfield gives him a chance here. And the last time they played, now they wouldn't have covered 3.5 because of the weird safety at the end, and that was sort of a bad beat. But the last time they played, he had a 73 PFF grade, 343 yards through the air. He was very impressive against the Ravens last year, the last time they played. And I think if he generates that kind of performance, you should be able to be confident in Browns plus 3.5, because I just don't think the Ravens have been consistent enough across the roster. And, Lamar's had his ups and downs, right? And I think it's really hard to bank on him right now, even as good as he is.
And one of the things we saw in that last matchup was Kareem Hunt really making a lot of plays as a true receiver, scored the game-tying touchdown before Lamar got back for his bathroom thing, lined up out wide. So, with the Browns, Baker is so banged up. And it feels weird to say, they need to get him more weapons, because when they did do that, then that became the, problem with all the freelancing routes and all that.
Odell came back for the last 2 games, right? That was a 40.4.
That's how it works, I think, yeah. But truly, Kareem Hunt, one of the best offensive weapons they have, all OBJ jokes aside, that will be a huge boost for the run game and pass game alike.
Eric, you mentioned that the Ravens right now aren't the Ravens that we think they should be, and that's for a fact since week 7, which is their last 4 games. It's 5 weeks, but they've only had 4 games because they've had their bye week. Overall offensive grade 66.5, that's 24th in the NFL. Defensive grade 66.7, that's 14th, but offensive EPA per play, 23rd. Defensive EPA per play, 27th. I mean, this is a bottom half of the NFL team over the last 5 weeks, 4 games for the Baltimore Ravens. They're just not that team that we saw earlier in the year. And yeah, maybe a little bit of regression was going to come, but That's just you can't have a ton of confidence in where the Ravens are exactly right now.
Exactly, and that's where we are relative to the betting market right now. If you look at the current division title odds for the AFC North, the Ravens are at 42%, so they are the favorite. But right now, if you were to go to like somebody like DraftKings or Circa or FanDuel, they're better than even money, right? So we look at the Ravens and say, look, if you grade out the rest of the players, it's not that impressive. The Browns are 27%; they are second there. But if the Ravens were to win, it would come up to that, the Ravens be at 61%, the Browns would be at 10%. Big. Just remember, the Browns get to play the Ravens again, so that again will, the 10% is sort of the hanging by a thread there that they win out, including winning against Baltimore. If Cleveland were to win, again, it shrinks down to where Cleveland, I think it's a little bit off on the marker there, but 43%, they would be the favorite if they were to win today, whereas Baltimore would fall to about 1-4. So again, this is a humongous leverage game, not only in the AFC in general, because all these teams are fighting for playoff spots, but this division specifically, the Ravens, with the chance to, lose it for the second straight year.
We got Darius Butler coming on the show in a little bit, but before we get to him, I want to hit two more quick previews because there are, like Eric said, there are so many big games that have playoff and division title implications. I want to make sure that we hit on all of them. The first one in this little quick hitter is Chargers at Broncos. Chargers favored on the road by 2.5 here. What do we think about this matchup, Sam?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Denver doing business right now in terms of locking up all those talented receivers, presumably for the next quarterback, not so much for Teddy. But, you lock up Courtland Sutton, you lock up Tim Patrick, but Jerry Jeudy might be the key to the whole thing. He has the third most snaps of those guys, but 150% of the targets of anybody else. Like, they feed him the ball. He's the guy that moves the chains, and since he's been back in the lineup, Teddy Bridgewater hasn't really had a bad game. If they can get that kind of performance out of Teddy, I think they can run it close, but I would still lean with the Chargers.
Yeah, I think the Broncos are a pretty good teaser leg here at plus 8.5. Like, if you can tease them up and find another game. It's rivalry week in college football just completed. The biggest rivalry, though, in the NFL right now is Joe Lombardi versus the wills of Justin Herbert, right? Like, the only players who have a lower ADOT, we talk about our guy Jared Goff, Big Ben, Tua.
ADOT meaning average at the target.
Like, when you're looking at a guy with that, and granted, he has been great going underneath, and the Chargers have good weapons going underneath, but the problem becomes, it's sort of this probabilistic entity where people are like, why are the Chargers only 6-4? It's like, well, they try to cross the street a million times on the way to the end zone. And the reason why, you have these pop-up offenses like Buffalo, it's like you have big plays. Big plays eliminate noise, right? Whereas, trying to, sort of get there by death by paper cuts, you're going to make a mistake, especially for a young quarterback.
Right.
So
yeah.
I like the Chargers, and I think Herbert's been fantastic. I wish that they would be a little bit more aggressive so that they can avoid what would be like for example, in this game, kind of a bad loss if they were to lose.
Well, and when we see Goff and Big Ben not throwing it downfield, we're like, makes sense. We watch that ball kind of sputter sometimes. That's not the case with Herbert. This guy is one of the best quarterbacks in the league when throwing downfield, and that makes the reality that he has only 2 passes thrown at least 20 yards downfield in the last 3 weeks combined. That much more frustrating. Truly, people. 3rd in PFF passing grade throwing deep. 1st in QB rating. Honestly, the Chargers taking down a Steelers defense that we talked about as being a little bit overrated, and without Watt, Hayden, or Minka in that game. It reminds me of the Chiefs going off on the Raiders. Like, it's great to see you guys put up points again, but I'm not convinced this offense is even close to fixed.
Very much a sin of omission for the Chargers on offense.
Man, I'm with you both. I want the Chargers to open it up more. I do, just in general. But against this Broncos defense, it's not like, if you just start throwing it deep, you're going to reap the rewards. This week might not be the week for that, because when we look at this Broncos defense, when they're defending passes that are more than 20 yards, like you said, they are 4th in the NFL in coverage grade when defending those deep passes like that. They're 8th when defending intermediate, even like 10 to 19 yards. So this coverage group is just really good right now at defending those things. And so I'm with you. How the Chargers will find their best identity is without a doubt pushing the ball a little bit more, getting the most out of Justin Herbert's arm. But I'm just saying, if we happen to get our wish and see it a little bit more this week, it might not be this, see, I told you so against this Broncos defense. Eric, what happens in the big what if?
This one has 2 big what ifs. Currently, both teams have a chance at the division title here, right? So if you look at the Chargers for the division, they're basically 1-4. Kansas City, the favorite there. With the win, they're 40% there. Denver's basically eliminated if LAC were to win. With a Denver win at home, an upset at home, they're basically even, right? Chargers 16%, Denver 10%. For the playoffs. The Chargers are a favorite to make the playoffs. Denver's a little bit of an underdog. But if Denver were to win, they're all the way up to 1-4 to make that tough playoff race. We get to see Teddy football in January, Sam, with the win. Whereas the Chargers would be somewhere around 50-50 to make the playoffs with a loss in this game. So there's a lot on the line in this game, both from an AFC West standpoint and an AFC in general standpoint.
Vikings-Niners. Last game that we're previewing here before we get to Darius, who's on the line with us. It's at San Francisco. Both of these teams coming off big division wins. We're talking about massive momentum. Niners favored by 3. They're favored by a field goal in this one. What do you think about that line, Sam?
Yeah, another huge game in terms of leverage in this week. Leverage week, apparently, that it is.
Yeah.
I don't know how Minnesota can stop what San Francisco wants to do on offense. The Vikings are basically down an entire defensive line.
Yeah.
Issues, obviously, with Everson Griffin, his mental health during the week. In addition to that, they were already missing all of their defensive linemen anyway. And the 49ers, their run game generally, I think, is less effective than people think it is intuitively. But they are really good at kind of putting their foot on somebody's throat when they have an advantage and really dominating in those types of games. And right now, you've got Trent Williams playing like left tackle like we've never seen from anybody.
Like a god.
George Kittle, one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. Deebo Samuel causing all kinds of problems. That run game is really good right now against bad teams. And I just don't think that the Vikings can match up with that. The only thing that would stop me betting into San Francisco is Minnesota being aware of that and saying, well, if we can't stop them, then we have to turn it over to Kirk Cousins and air it out to Justin Jefferson. When they do that, that's the best Minnesota Vikings, and that evens it all up.
Well, and that's where the best bet in this game is. George Trahuri and I in the PFF forecast, which you can listen to Wednesdays and Sundays, we took over 48.5. It's now 49.5 if you saw the graphic there. I think that's the ultimate fate of this game, right? I think the Niners are explosive on offense. I also think the Vikings secondary is, pickable, right? And so I don't think the Niners are stopped here, but unless Kirk Cousins has a famous meltdown game out of Kirk Cousins, they should score too. The Niners aren't a particularly great defense. Their corners, I don't trust Thielen, Jefferson. You look at Osborne. Also, Conklin's played well at tight end. So I think that this game goes over. If I had to pick a side, I would take San Francisco at this point just because of the injuries up front. But to me, this is a fun over game if you want to bet this game.
Ian, what do you think about Cousins in this game?
Has been a while since we've had an inexplicable Cousins dud, so we've got to be careful being too confident. But as long as they can keep him upright, we've really seen him dominate from a clean pocket all season long. Not easy against Nick Bosa, but this still is a pass rush outside the top 20 in pressure rate. And Cousins, my goodness, first in PFF passing grade. Only 2.3% of his dropbacks have been turnover-worthy play rates from a clean pocket. The dude has really been a world beater when given that benefit. Now, things get gross in a hurry when he starts to get pressured. But again, that I think will be the difference between the Vikings consistently moving the ball and not. And hopefully the 49ers can do the same because they've gotten a healthy Kittle back.
Right.
And Brandon Ayuk has come back out of the doghouse. Deebo Samuel, the running back, y'all. Good things on both offenses.
Yeah. Kirk Cousins, 5 turnover-worthy plays in the last 2 games, which are more than basically all the previous games combined. And one of the reasons for that was them taking shots downfield. Kirk had been one of the lower ADOT, average depth of target guys in the NFL for a while in the season. They decided to be aggressive. They're going to have to do that in this game to keep up with San Francisco.
Yeah, and I think they're going to have to do that because when you look at the last 4 weeks for both of these teams, you look at San Francisco's offense, right? And you can look at their offensive grade and their passing grade. They're second in the NFL in both of those. Now, their rushing grade's 24th, but they rush the ball a lot more. So there's a chance that, okay, you're just not going to have that high of grades. We know that San Francisco can still run the ball and they can still be effective. When you flip it over to the Minnesota Vikings over the last 4 weeks, coverage grade and EPA per play all down near the bottom. I think it's 23rd and 27th in both of those grades.
Trash.
So that tells me this. The 49ers, we know, want to run the ball. But with Jimmy Garoppolo, they just need a handful of those pass plays to work, to keep the offense alive, to keep drives going, to score points, to get it within field goal and touchdown range. When teams can stop those handful of passes, that's when you really start to see the 49ers offense get anemic. I don't really think the Vikings have, like Sam said, the defensive line to stop the run or the coverage unit to stop those handful of passes. So to me, this spells out a San Francisco 49ers win.
The most valuable player for the Packers last week against the Vikings was Xavier Woods. And that's that second safety next to Harrison Smith gave up chunk play after chunk play after chunk play.
Right.
George Kittle's coming for him. Right. Deebo Samuel's coming for him. Brandon Ayuk's coming for him. I do agree with that. This game, if you want to look at leverage for the NFC playoff race, both these teams are about coin flips to make the playoffs. If you look at FanDuel, you look at DraftKings, you're basically getting, it's the Vikingest thing of all time. The Vikings are minus 110 to make the playoffs, minus 110 to miss the playoffs. We actually find value on the Vikings if you want to lay it a little bit with minus 110 for them to make it. With a Minnesota win, they're basically 3-4. San Francisco's 1-4. With a San Francisco win, the Vikings are about 37% or so. San Francisco's 2-3, 65% there. So this is humongous. The team that loses this game is going to be an underdog to make the playoffs. The team that wins is going to be a sizable favorite, especially with New Orleans' loss on Thursday night.
All right, before we get to Darius, something that's, well, as of last week, comical on this show is the fact that we don't have our phones on us at all times when we're sitting here on the desk, so we don't see exactly who the inactives are every single week. That's why we have Kendall here with us to break the news, who's active and inactive for these early games, Kendall.
Yep. So holding all the power. So today's inactives include A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, Kadarius Toney, Kyle Rudolph, Alden Tate, Deion Jones, Justin Reed. So that means active Saquon, Fabian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Kareem Hunt, Vita Vea, and Ian's MVP, Cordero Patterson.
He's in?
Yep.
Yes!
Active.
We don't have Auden Tate.
How funny is this? Like, there's significant people involved in this list, and the one that tilts Ian the most is the Bengals' fifth wide receiver.
They're 1-2 without Auden Tate this year.
Auden Tate
wide receiver
has always been a good wide receiver.
Always
been a good wide receiver.
You can't separate from Ian's love or opposing defensive backs, but he's good.
Uncalled for.
Folks, you are just days removed from having to sit at the Thanksgiving table and listen to your family members spew football nonsense that you know is just absolutely not true. Don't let that happen at Christmas. And the way that you can avoid that is by getting a PFF subscription. We're running a sale right now, 40% off if you use the promo code CYBER40 for a PFF Edge or PFF Elite. So when your family member is saying all this, like, oh, this team's not doing this is the reason why they're bad, and you just know it's not true, now you can quantify it. Now you can pull up this premium stats for that bad boy and literally just show them where they're wrong. And you can do so when you have either of those subscriptions for PFF. Like I said, promo code CYBER40. You will get 40% off either of these subscriptions over at PFF.com. All right, now we're welcoming in Darius Butler here to the show. Darius, first of all, hope you had a great Thanksgiving, my man. Actually, now that I'm wishing you a happy Thanksgiving, I need you to get in on the debate. Are you like a turkey, ham guy, both? Like, definitely one over the other? What is it, turkey or ham? What's
100% ham. I'm a ham guy. Only time I can eat turkey if I got some good stuffing dressing on the side of it, maybe some cranberry sauce. They need some extras. I can eat ham all by itself. So ham easily.
Oh man.
What about as a lunch
Easily.
meat?
Turkey's too damn. It's too damn.
Does that
dry.
change?
Man, what about like fried turkey though? Nothing like you've never like any kind of like fried turkey, nothing like that.
You know, I don't want to throw my family under the bus. Maybe it's just my family who we don't do the fried. And I saw some Cajun turkey. I saw some different ones specifically on Marcus Spears on his page. I'm like, damn, maybe I need to give turkey another try. So maybe it's just my family. But we're more in the ham, and we even go chicken on Thanksgiving too. So turkey's just there because it kind of has to be.
Listen, for the Butler family watching, I did not start this segment thinking that we were going to get slander of the family name here. So I just want to make sure I'm exonerated in that way. Darius, let's get to some football talk. Let's talk about your dog of the day, and that is the Indianapolis Colts. Your Colts.
Oh, yeah.
Going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Buccaneers get off schneid last week, get a win. They're kind of going in the right direction, but shoot, so are the Colts. I know a lot of people were kind of writing them off at the beginning of the year. So we'll start with you for the game previews. What do you think about this one? Why do you like Indianapolis at home getting 3 points in this game?
I mean, they're coming off their best performance, in my opinion, of the year. You know, and it's the time of the year when they need to crank it up. Obviously, came out of the block slow, banged up, injured. Now everyone's healthy. I don't think they had one player ruled out this game on Friday, so they're healthy. They're riding high right now, coming off a nice road win, coming back at home. Going to honor some great players, some great former players there. One being Robert Mathis going into the Ring of Honor today. So I mean, all the things are lined up for him. And this is, I mean, you got Tennessee. They're going going to New England. And, you know, they just put Julio on IR, A.J. Brown's on IR, Derrick Henry's on IR. So, I mean, the division could be kind of for the taking. So they can't afford to slip up and lose any more games going down the stretch.
Eric, do we have, does Vegas ever think about when you have halftime ceremonies? Like, this team's getting momentum in this one. We've got to give them a point and a half.
No, I don't think so, but I think it's probably baked into the number here. But Darius does bring up a good point. I mean, you're talking about a Colts team finally over 500, only 2 games behind the Tennessee Titans, right? It's more like 3 because they have the tiebreaker. But, I think the Colts, if you were to restart the season right now at 0-0, they'd be the favorites to win this division easily.
Yeah, certainly with the health of both teams into account. I mean, just this point going forward, you got to like Indianapolis. What do you think about this one, Ian?
Yeah, and we've really seen them win, not even having to rely on Carson Wentz over the past few weeks, who was having himself a really great start to the year. I think it was Sam that brought up like an overwhelming majority of his turnover-worthy plays were just in that monsoon of a game against the 49ers to begin with. So, maybe they do just want to play this type of brand where they only need to give the ball to Carson Wentz to pass, 20, 25 times a game, but he's making the most out of it so far.
Yeah,
Sam, what do you think?
I'm really fascinated to see, like, the Colts have been absolutely wrecking people in the run game since the entire offensive line got healthy. Now, the 2 most important players on either side of the ball, relevant to that, Quentin Nelson against Vita Vea, those guys are both kind of working their way back from injury, though, as well. They're both vaguely unhealthy, vaguely questionable. We'll get to see sort of which guy is closer to 100%. I think is pretty relevant. But the Bucs have been one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Second in the NFL in yards per attempt, second in explosive run rate allowed, and they do it without stacking the box. Like, they don't need 8 guys in the box to have those results. They were able to dominate because of guys like Vita Vea. So if you take that away from the Colts, does their offense still roll? Because all of a sudden then you're relying on Carson Wentz in a shootout potentially with Tom Brady on the other side, and you're getting healthy, right, Darius? I think that the interesting thing about the Colts is that in a league that's engineered to stop the Bills and the Chiefs and teams like that, Indianapolis is this change-up, right? They're physical, they run the football, they play defense, I think in a very disciplined way. Mm-hmm. Do the Bucs present an anecdote to that in the fact that, like, they're not, they can stop the run, right? And, with the Colts, Darius, I think, like, they have, Michael Pittman's playing really well, but the thing that was hurting the Bucs so much was their lack of depth in the secondary. They got Dean back, they got Murphy Bunting back. Do you think that presents a challenge here for the Colts?
I mean, it definitely presents a challenge because, like you guys talked about earlier, this will be the week, I think, where we have to lean a little more on Carson Wentz because I don't think you're going to have those gaping holes where Jonathan Taylor goes and runs for 5 touchdowns a day. I think he still has a successful day. I don't know if he cracks that 80-yard mark, but it will be some play action, some shots down the field that we'll need. Even T.Y. Hilton, I think this is a game we need, 13 to show up and have one of his splash games. And I know for a lot of people, those days are behind them, but you have Pittman, who every defense is going to be concerned about coming into the game. Mo Alley, Jack Doyle, T.Y., those guys definitely have to, Naheem Hines, those guys have to make some splash plays in the pass game, and I think that'll be the difference today. But it will be a tough challenge. And don't forget about that Tom Brady-led offense. I mean, they've kind of been struggling. They got it going last week, but I don't think that offense is the same without Antonio Brown in there. So luckily we missed him this week. So it should be a good game, but I got the Colts winning this one.
I'm glad that he brought up Michael Pittman because I think that Michael Pittman could be a major X factor in this game because you mentioned kind of what the Bucs are all about, right? They stop the run. If Vita Vea plays, game time to say, like, if Vita Vea plays, then this is going to be a major four, or if he's playing at anything above 80%, I'll say, like, even if he goes out there, then they're going to be able to give Indianapolis a challenge at where their strength is. But the big X factor moment might be when Carson Wentz has to throw the football. If he's throwing it to Michael Pittman, and Michael Pittman, who has been playing really well, Bucs don't really have a corner to go up against a guy like Michael Pittman. If they had Carlton Davis, this might be a different story, but even with Sean Murphy Bunting back, they don't exactly have a corner who can consistently match up with what Pittman brings to the table. So that's where I get a little bit nervous. And Tampa, For as much as obviously they got a big bounce back win last week against the Giants, they have not been the same team on the road as they have at home. And that's why, I mean, I'm with you guys. I think that the 3 points for Indianapolis, I know there's always like, oh, Tom Brady can blow anybody out. It's true, but I'd be taking Indianapolis and the points in this game.
There's one more injury that could be a big factor in this game. Ali Marpet is supposed to be out for Tampa Bay. Yeah. Last year when that happened, when they lost Marpet for a couple of games, they reshuffled the entire offensive line. They made the whole interior worse. They moved Ryan Jensen to guard. He was bad at guard. The replacement center was bad. Suddenly 2 spots are a problem, not just one. And Brady struggled with all the pressure coming up the middle. Like, they gave up more pressure in that one game than they had in the half season before that had happened. If that happens again in this game, all of a sudden you've got guys like DeForest Buckner.
Not great.
Right. That's a real problem.
I think about
Grover Stewart. That's how you rattle Brady up the middle.
Yeah, the Colts are very much a they kind of like the Eberflus defense. This kind of reminds me of Spagnuolo defense, which like funnels targets away from outside receivers into the middle of the field, much like it was in the Super Bowl against the Bucs. With the Chiefs defense, which I think is very similar. I like Mike Evans under 4.5 catches in this game. I think that he's the one that they're going to want to stop. He's a little bit banged up. I think Godwin's going to be the guy that gets the majority of the targets as well as the tight ends. And I think Darius, if this game were to go bad for the Colts, it would go bad for the same way that it went bad against the Giants, which is that Rob Gronkowski it goes back and makes it look like it's 2010 again.
Ooh, under 4 catches? You think you have enough faith in the Colts DBs to hold Mike Evans to that kind of a number? What do you think, Darius?
I'll say over. I would say over that amount. If he's healthy. He did kind of limp off the field last week, so that definitely plays into that. So it's not a bad bet. But not having AB out there, I think he gets his fair share of targets, especially when they get around that red zone. Brady loves him down there.
Before we move on to get into some of Darius's best bets of the week, Jonathan Taylor MVP talks. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about this one? We talk about it being kind of a toss-up with a lot of these quarterbacks. I know that over the last week, people have really bought into Jonathan Taylor being a potential MVP. I'm going to start with Darius. Darius, what do you think about JT leading the league in rushing, maybe get some MVP votes?
I mean, he's in the conversation. He's definitely in the conversation, but we know realistically it's a quarterback award. But when he jumped up there and got 5, touchdowns against one of the top defenses in the league, he definitely got into the conversation. But it did take him, 3 weeks to even become the league leader in rushing with Derrick Henry being out. And Derrick Henry, wasn't even realistically in the conversation. So my guy, on the other hand, Justin Herbert, he had, 350 in the air, 90 on the ground last week. So he should be back in that conversation. But no one really has a strong hold on it. If we have a good game against Tom Brady, hopefully we knock him down a couple notches.
Sam, you and Eric are just smirking at each other like 8th grade kids in math class.
I mean, I'm just eager to see what Eric says.
Jeez. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor last week, as Darius talked, passed Derrick Henry. He currently has the most wins above replacement among running backs. He's fantastic. I'll say that. I agree with Darius's point. He's by definition in the conversation because we're talking about him.
But he's not. Get rid of valuable though. Just do but
that's the point. I'm
PFF does.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's certainly a candidate for Offensive Player of the Year. I'll say that.
Wow,
I get it.
We don't get Hayden-ass Eric this week.
We can always talk about running backs not being valuable enough and the salary cap and how much of a problem it is paying them. But Jonathan Taylor has done everything we could ever hope he'll do this year. 5.8 yards per carry. I know we have fancier stats, but everyone in the stadium knows the ball's going to the guy. What's Derrick Henry?
But here's my thought process, though. And even when you restrict it to the Colts, we all know that Carson Wentz is a less impressive player than Jonathan Taylor. That's on the table. If you replace Carson Wentz with Jacoby Brissett, the difference in wins for the Colts is bigger than if you replace Jonathan Taylor with Marlon Mack or Naheem Hines or something like that. That's the point.
This is why MVP in the NFL is a stupid award, because we get caught up in this ridiculous notion of value.
I didn't create the rules of football, Sam.
It's not your fault, Eric. On this occasion, it is not your fault.
But people just interpret it wrong,
But the rule is dumb, or the award is dumb. In almost any other sport, MVP is by definition just the best player that plays. In the NFL, MVP is a quarterback. The end, period. The position is so skewed in terms of value, you can only select amongst quarterbacks. So get rid of the value part of it. You're not trying to award.
But that's what the Offensive Player of the Year
is. So we should really be talking about Jonathan Taylor's Offensive Player of the Year. He's an
Offensive Player of the Year candidate the same way that Derrick Henry was the last few years, and we're all we're all in that church there.
Would you agree with that point, Darius?
I think I would say I think Derrick Henry should have been he legitimately should have been in MVP conversations last year. Maybe not this year, but last year. But I love how riled up you guys get when we start talking about running backs and their value. I'm sure you guys heard a story about the Bucs. If Worst wasn't there, they would have took Jonathan Taylor last year in the first round. I would have loved to see you guys reaction to that.
Listen, I tweeted this out.
Especially Eric's.
I tweeted this out when I saw this news. Ain't no way the Bucs win the Super Bowl if they don't get either Tristan Wirfs or would have traded up and not gotten Antoine Winfield and selected Jonathan Taylor instead. They needed both Tristan Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr. to win that Super Bowl last year. I think and I said this on draft weekend last year, they had the dream draft to start that 2020 NFL draft, and it paid off for them. Jonathan Taylor,
and if the Chiefs would have gotten T. Higgins or Michael Pittman at pick 32, they might have beaten the Bucs. That's how.
No, can't be.
They needed Wirfs.
Yeah. Look, and also we're all not focusing on the right thing. If the Bucs would have drafted Jonathan Taylor, we would have never had Lombardi Lenny.
That's true.
That's my biggest takeaway.
It's just so convenient to bring this up after the guy scores a 5-touchdown game. Like, come on, what are we doing?
That is.
Where was this after week 2?
Pound the table.
That is the worst genre of football news, isn't it? Where it's like. Bill Polian. I love Tom Brady.
It's the opposite.
I would have picked,
It's the opposite bulletin board material, right? It's like we're playing Jonathan Taylor. We obviously don't want to do anything to annoy them and to make shit like to piss them off. What's the opposite we can do? Praise the man, make him sound like the greatest player in the world. Yeah. Maybe he'll be too full of himself.
And then shut him down and make yourself look better if you shut him down.
Yeah. The Bucs. I'll just say the Bucs were they had their eye on all 4 of those offensive tackles over Jonathan Taylor. So that's what I think would have been the case.
Some real Austin Jackson slander over there.
Oh. With good reason. Okay, so let's get to your first best bet, Darius. What other game do you have circled as a best bet this week?
I had Panthers -2.
You did?
Over the Dolphins.
Yep.
Dolphins, I'm a Dolphin fan. They had a couple good weeks back-to-back. Then we struggled, beat the Jets by a touchdown. But Cam, I was impressed with Cam last week against the Washington football team. I feel like he personally played, and that offense played well enough to win that game. Getting the ball to C-Mac in the right spots, controlling the offense, controlling the tempo. He looked very explosive and healthy, and that was only with probably 2-3 pages of the actual playbook. So I'm impressed, and I'm looking forward to him going forward. That defense, man, the defense got their soul taken from the football team, especially on the ground. They ran it down the throat for about 200 yards. So I think they bounced back and have a much better performance against this Dolphins team on both sides of the ball. So I'm going to Panthers -2 over the Dolphins.
Well, Eagles-Giants. I think that was the other one that you had. How confident are you in that line? Eagles being a 3.5-point favorite over the Giants.
I'm confident, man. The last month of football, Jalen Hurts and that Eagles offense, they've been averaging, over 30 points a game. And you're going up against the Giants, who went from Jason Garrett to Freddie Kitchens calling the plays, but you still got Daniel Jones at quarterback. And I don't think they could score 34 points if they start at the 20 every drive. So I'm taking the Eagles here. Defense been playing well as well. Darius Slay, he's getting in the end zone, seems like every week. Yeah. So I love this Eagles over the Giants pick.
As somebody who had a decent amount of money on Kadarius Toney, over 43.5 receiving yards on Monday, the 14 targets for 40 yards was tilting, to say the least.
Wait, did he really hit the under on that?
Yes.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. We're going to clap.
That was
oh my God.
That was a journey. I will say it's interesting, and I do agree with both of these sides. I do think the Dolphins are going to be a little bit pluckier. They're on a 3-game win streak. I like them in a teaser up to 8.5. But it's really interesting in this NFL right now, where since 2019, basically road teams have won the exact same amount of games as home teams. That's pre-COVID. We're not post-COVID, but that's fans in the stands now. Darius is taking 2 road favorites. I think road favorites are sort of like the one, they're becoming popular, right? Where the home field advantage in our mind is no longer a big deal. Mm-hmm. And you have teams like the Panthers, like the Eagles, laying short numbers. I do think both are the better team here, but yeah, I find it interesting. I do think that is a trend that's changing in the betting space in the NFL.
Eagles, Panthers, thoughts on either of those teams?
I'm excited to see what the Giants look like without Jason Garrett. Like, could this be an actual post-Gase type of situation? Tony can get over his props in future weeks.
Can you imagine the conversation with Daniel Jones? Daniel, we got some good news and some bad news. The good news is Jason Garrett's gone. He's not going to be dragging this offense down again. The bad news is Freddie's taken over. And, it might not be a dramatic
Freddie had like the one stretch.
Freddie was dialing it up for the Browns in 18, and then 19 was a journey, I would say.
He just couldn't do the head coach thing. That's all.
Yeah,
I mean, sure. This game, I would say at this point in the season means a lot more to the Eagles too, because the same thing is kind of going on in the AFC South, going on in the NFC East with them and the Cowboys. They're dropping a couple games. They're kind of banged up. Are they the same team that we thought they were a month ago? And the Eagles are kind of rising at the same time. So they maybe smell a little blood in the water. Giants, they'll probably be cleaning house this offseason.
Right.
So
yeah,
those are two completely different locker rooms post Thanksgiving. I know some guys, you start making offseason plans. You start thinking about your body more. Hey, I need to be fresh this offseason. I got free agency coming up. Maybe I should opt to get the surgery. So a lot of different things that start going through players' minds in these locker rooms during this time of year, depending on your record and team morale.
We talk about Minnesota versus San Francisco today being a game that can decide who's going to make the playoffs in the NFC. The Eagles have the easiest schedule in the NFL moving forward here. Like, there is a path for this Eagles team to be playing in January.
Can you imagine where the Eagles would be if they had realized in week 1 the self-evident fact of what this offense should look like?
Well, week 2, they got Atlanta week 1, which covers a multitude of sins.
Instead of stumbling ass backwards into the obvious game plan in week 7 or 8, whenever they played the Lions and accidentally realized that we should be a power running team. Yeah. If they just figured that out to start the season, this team would be rivaling Dallas at the top of the division.
I think Nick Sirianni, I think on defense they're extremely vanilla, extremely unimaginative. But I think on offense, Nick Sirianni deserves a great deal of credit. I think that team.
Do you not deserve more credit for realizing the obvious thing to begin with?
Yeah, but first-time head coach, I think there's a lot of stuff that's on your plate. I just think I think that sometimes we don't think about how difficult it is for guys to make this transition to having all of this stuff now on their plate.
But to give him credit is rewarding him for putting out the fire that he started in the first place.
Well,
it's Darius got to give credit for the same exact thing, right? The arsonist and then the firefighter. We all remember the firefighter.
Yeah,
right?
That's not a good thing.
Okay. They're the same guy.
Wow, Sam, anti-firefighter on the show.
However they got there, I will just say the fantasy community is thrilled that Jalen Hurts is not getting benched anytime soon, because that dude is a god in fantasy land.
Okay, what were you saying, Darius? What were you saying about Sirianni?
Oh no, I like the fact that he's adjusted, because you see a lot of coaches who just don't, and they adjust, and they also got healthier up front. Obviously, Lane Johnson has been dealing with his things off the field. They got some guys in front. You got Miles back. But even before Miles got hurt, everyone was screaming, "Give Miles the damn ball more!" And so I love to see it. I love to see Jalen Hurts building more confidence, not only in that locker room, but kind of with that fan base, which is a tough fan base to win over. So I'm loving what I'm seeing out of Philly right now, and I didn't expect it at all.
The incredulity strain over the growth mindset that Nick Sirianni has. You just want him to be Jason Garrett? You just want him to never improve?
Nobody is arguing that putting out the fire is better than not putting out the fire. My point is simply that starting it in the first place is where you went wrong. The better person is the guy that never burned down the building.
Or was it next level to make it look bad, and now he's
because
think about it.
Going into the season, get that bar low. Our colleague George Shahuri was talking about Sirianni being a one-year coach, and Ed actually had plausibility because they fired Peterson late, right? They fired Peterson late. They did not get the pick of the litter. Sirianni didn't even call plays in Indianapolis, right? This is his first time calling plays and being a head coach.
Yes.
Again, give him credit for improving.
I have. Putting out the fire is better than not putting out the fire.
Okay, conversation.
But it's not as good as the guy that set fire to the house in the first place.
He's not an arsonist, right? He's just probably a bad cook.
Whoever might be making you turkey. Again, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. Butler family listening. That wasn't me. That wasn't me. I promise. I'm reading the teleprompter. I'm sorry. That's nothing else. All right, let's get to our stats of the week. We're doing this to wrap up every show. When we get to the end of the show, what we basically do is here on the stats, we look through a lot of PFF data over the week, whether it's NFL, college, whatever it is. We find a lot of crazy stats, both good and bad. So to end the show, I want to give these guys an opportunity to shout out maybe a stat or something that either they did talk about in the show and they want to emphasize again, or maybe didn't get the chance to talk about in the show that they found out this week. Sam, I'm going to start with you. What is your PFF stat of the week?
Let's go back to Thanksgiving. Dallas had 22 total pressures in that game. Micah Parsons had 10 of them. That guy is the best pass rusher in the draft from this last class.
Yes.
He's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, and he's not even a pass rusher. Like, he's moonlighting because all their defensive ends have gotten injured. That guy is a phenomenal player.
Mine builds off of yours because I knew Micah Parsons was good, right? I'm watching the games. I'm seeing when they played the Chiefs, I was like, this dude's getting sacks today, and he did. He ended up getting 2 sacks. I didn't realize how good he was, okay? He is first in pass rush grade. I'm not just talking about amongst rookies. This is in the NFL. He's first in pass rush grade for us, first in pressure percentage, and first in pass rush productivity. And like you said, the dude went into the draft as an off-ball linebacker. I know he played defensive end at Penn State when he got to Penn State initially, so he's got that background to him, but first in all of these categories, and it's not like it's small sample size. He's manipulating the stats here a little bit. He's got over 200 solely pass rush reps, and you look at Myles Garrett. I think that Myles is in like the 400, and some other guys are in like the high 300s. So it's not as much as full-time defensive ends, but still, this is nuts. It's crazy how good Micah Parsons has been this season.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like you said, not only as a rookie, but I mean, he should be in that defensive player of the year conversation. I mean, it's rare that you get a guy that can get on the line of scrimmage and wreak havoc, and then you can also take him off the ball, and he can fly sideline to sideline as well. So he's the prototypical football player that you want up front in the box, in your front seven on the defense right now. So I can't believe he fell in the Cowboys' lap, but after coming off that year he took off, I don't know how many pass rushing snaps he had in college, but I'm sure it wasn't a lot. But he has that kind of weird stance, and he gives tackles headaches. So I love watching this kid play, man. Hungry lion eats.
There you go.
Yeah, I know. I mean, he kind of reminds me of Lawrence Taylor, to be honest with you, like an off-ball guy who can play in space but also rush the passer. But speaking of Hall of Fame players, today's game between the Packers and the Rams, everybody's going to talk about Rodgers versus Stafford. This rivalry has been going on for since 2009.
We got the bunnies.
Exactly, and everybody's talking about Stafford as if he's in this category. Aaron Rodgers has generated 20 more wins above replacement since 2009 than Stafford has.
That's a huge
number. That's significant.
So Rodgers has been worth about 45 wins above replacement, which is an immense amount, especially given the fact that he missed time in 13-17. And Stafford has missed time too. But he's almost been twice as valuable as Stafford during this course of time, which I think is crazy given sort of how we think about Stafford versus how we think about Rodgers. Rodgers has just been third in the NFL over that time. So.
That's nuts. It's crazy.
Best for last. Yeah. All right, guys.
All right.
Let's go.
Ian told us. Hold on. Ian told us before the show that he's like, "Oh, I got a new stat," and he immediately wrote it down. And I said, "Okay, don't tell us."
I just saw him point out his camera.
I want to find out live on the show. So go ahead. Let's get the camera ready. Go ahead.
This is my time.
Better be good now.
We got a lot of resources behind the scenes here at PFF, and then when you think of R and Excel and the different ways you can morph stats, endless possibilities here. The Falcons this year have played now 7 quarters without Cordero Patterson. 0 points. That's it.
Yes. I feel like I could have probably guessed that without any resources here. I can look at that office So he should be back today.
Hey,
hopefully they can beat the damn Jags.
MVP, Cordero Patterson?
I mean, the numbers.
The numbers, they're right there.
I'm just talking about the data.
Folks. They're right there, folks. We're just presenting it to you. I knew that it had to be. That's, what? We should have seen this coming.
Eric's speechless.
that it was going to be. Yeah, Eric's got nothing. Eric's got running back / wide receiver / quarterback / kick returners matter. And that's
do you
what
listen
we've
to?
That's
what Scottie Pippen said. He said Tom Brady can't be the GOAT because he only plays one position. So Cordero Patterson or Taysom Hill.
Or Micah Parsons.
Or Micah Parsons. Just not Brady. So.
Just not, or Ty Montgomery. Okay, now we're literally just naming multiple players here. Kendall, before we get out of here, I need to know: are you on team ham or team turkey?
Oh, it's turkey.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's turkey.
Thank you.
No question.
We got it. We got her.
We're back.
She's back on the bandwagon. Darius, before we get out of here, any final thoughts before we end the show for you?
Man, a lot of good matchups today. Like I said, I love post-Thanksgiving football, but I'm really excited. I would say the most excited, weirdly enough, about this Vikings-49ers games. I feel like both these teams, 500 teams, but they're both, when you watch them play, they look much better than 500 teams. So a lot of playoff implication in this game, so I'm excited about that one.
Since we're talking about food, we were all discussing this before the show. Apparently, Devonta Smith has the same pregame meal all the time, and it's McDonald's. So he's going down the Chad Ocho single pass. So I'm curious, did you have like a go-to pregame meal? Were you like a fast food guy? What was your pregame meal? I gotta know.
No fast food. I didn't want any mishaps during the game, so I kind of stuck to the basics: pasta, high carbs, maybe some chicken, some veggies. The night before the game, I used to do a lot of. I used to go heavy on the ice cream until luck, got in my ear and told me that's bad for the inflammation, so I cut it out. So I finally switched that up. But outside of that, I keep it basic, typical pasta. And then a nice PB&J at halftime.
Oh, okay. That's also do you have any like weird stories about weird things that teammates have eaten during halftimes? Because I remember when Kyle Pitts was going through the process, this isn't necessarily weird, it's just very specific. He said he eats one Reese's cup at halftime, and then he saves the other one for after the game. Like he's just like, you got the two Reese's cups, and he's like one Reese's cup at halftime, and then the other one for after. So it's like he's looking forward to that during the fourth quarter. I'm curious, did you have any teammates that had like some weird halftime eats?
I couldn't even tell you honestly. That 12 minutes or however long it is, it seems like it goes by so quick. Everyone has some people trying to get IVs, some people trying to double up their pre-workout. Some people's getting a PB&J, a banana, an orange slice, so many different things going on. And then you got to go over halftime adjustments as well. So no good stories for you there. Sorry.
All right. Well, I know Ian's just probably pounding Seattle's best coffee at halftime because that's what he does here on the show.
Seattle got something good right now.
Wow, there we go. Any final thoughts from you guys before we move on?
Miles Sanders scores a touchdown today. League high, 98 touches without one. Comes to the end today.
Wow. Okay. All
wow.
Right. You got it, Sam?
I could buy that.
Eric, anything?
What's your halftime, Eric?
Yeah. What do you?
Chipotle.
For when I played?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you?
Oh, whoa. Now, yeah, Chipotle. But when I was PB&J like Darius, high functioning athlete,
okay.
of course.
Of course. Yeah.
What's the ratio? Jelly to peanut butter.
It's a good one. I think 50-50 is the only way to go. Jelly's the best part of peanut butter.
No.
Let's be honest.
I'm 70-30 peanut butter.
Ooh, he's looking for the protein.
We're talking crunchy peanut butter, right?
He's trying to.
No,
peanut butter is for psychopaths.
What?
I hate crunchy peanut butter.
Yes.
What?
Terrible.
Yeah, it's a rough take.
It's terrible.
I mean,
I should have stopped after
this chair.
The ghost of trash.
This chair is the purveyor of the worst food takes of all time.
Roll the credits, Brad. We're done.
We've got to get out of here before the food take curse chair does any more damage. For Darius Butler, for Kendall Valenzuela, for Sam Monson, for Ian Hartitz, for Eric Eager, not for crunchy peanut butter.
No.
I'm Trevor Sikkema. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you guys right here same time next week.